Series 2 of my podcast Innervation, where we get to hear stories and experiences of incredible women in science and technology. Not only will you get insights into some fascinating innovations, but you may also even relate to their stories, especially if you're a little unconventional or non-conforming. As with all science and technology, what these women do for a living has a real impact on all of our lives, and we don't often realise it. But here on Innervation, I'm also giving women a platform for them to be heard and for us to be inspired and uplifted by what they've learned along their life's journeys, both personally and professionally. This week, I talked to Thendral Kamal, who is an aerospace engineering student and aspires to go to space one day, hopefully with NASA.
My name is Thendral Kamal, and I'm almost 20 years old. I'm an aerospace engineering student at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. And ever since I was a little girl, my biggest dream has become, since then, to become the first Indian woman to set foot on Mars. And ever since the age of 16, I've sort of been working on checking off the checklist and the requirements of, things to do as you progress and eventually apply to become an astronaut candidate. And one of those checklist things includes, getting a degree, getting at least a master's degree in any STEM field. And I've had a passion for aerospace engineering since I was very young, which is what I'm currently pursuing in university. And along this amazing journey, with this, seemingly insurmountable, mountain of a goal, to be, as you may understand, wanting to become an astronaut is no easy feat. I have been working on, sharing my dreams, sharing my journey, and sharing my passions for space with other people on social media platforms like Instagram and Twitter, where I am hoping to inspire other women of color, just like myself, that the sky isn't the limit. This is who I am.
Wow, I love that. The sky isn't the limit. I just love that. Gosh, I mean, first of all, congratulations, because I never would have guessed with your maturity and kind of focus, like even in the first few moments of speaking with you. I mean, it's amazing that you're just 20 years old, because you just seem so like focused on where you want to get to.
Thank you.
And I guess it does take that, doesn't it? Because NASA, making it to NASA is just so competitive, I've heard.
Yes, yeah.
But I thought you were at NASA.
Oh no, I'm currently still in college. I can't be at NASA.
You can't be yet. So the outfit is what?
This flight suit is sort of a symbol of my dreams and how far I want to get. I believe it was my 16th birthday when my dad came up to me and he said, if you want to become an astronaut, you got to look the part. And we had this flight suit tailored for me.
So awesome. But where are you living now then?
I'm currently in the US. I'm currently in Indiana at Purdue University, where I'm pursuing my degree.
Okay. So when are you going to make your first application to NASA?
So currently when I apply to NASA, to apply to jobs at NASA, you have to be a US citizen. So that's something I'm working on as well. Once I get my degree, I would be working towards getting my American citizenship, and then only then would I be able to apply to NASA. It's a work in progress, and that is definitely one of my dreams. And I'm working on, as I said before, ticking all the boxes on the checklist to get there. So hopefully it's not too far off in the near future.
Well, I'm more convinced now that NASA needs you.
Thank you so much.
My question to you would be like, what gave you so much determination to have a dream like this? Absolutely.
When I was younger, this was a very common response whenever, I would tell people, or, mostly the adults, whenever I would tell the adults, there's the question, they would come up to you and they would be like, so kiddo, what do you want to do when you're older? And then, I would just go like, I'm going to become an astronaut. And, they'd laugh and they'd be like, oh yeah, she'll grow out of it. And I never did. It stuck with me since I was young. And the same wide-eyed curiosity that I had for space and, Mars, and just understanding the worlds beyond our own, wide-eyed curiosity never left me since I was about, 13 years old, when I first started reading books, when I first started, like surfing the web and trying to understand about space, reading as much as I could about it. And I remember, eventually coming, as you read about space, the moon landings, you can't miss it. It's such a huge part of space, the space race during the Cold War. I came across it, and I was reading all about the Apollo missions. And, I have a great deal of respect for all of the astronauts who made it past that frontier. And I remember asking myself the question, okay, so why haven't, it's been almost 50 years at the time, it's been almost 50 years. And yet there still hasn't been a single woman to set foot on the lunar surface yet. And how are we going to start thinking about missions to Mars and, establishing permanent human presences on the moon and Mars when we haven't even landed a woman there yet? And I was just confused, and I didn't understand why. And more I read about it, I saw how shockingly few the number of female astronauts there are. Every year when NASA selects its cohort of astronaut candidates, women comprise a very small percent of the graduating astronaut class. And I wondered, well, why is this the reason? Because I know that there were many girls just like myself, just as motivated, if not more than I am, to go to space, to do these, seemingly impossible things, to do these things, to go where, seemingly no man has gone before. Women wanted to be there. Women wanted to be there.
And they're really suitable for space travel. They're lighter.
Exactly. That is one of the reasons as well. And I wondered why. And, reading more about the women astronauts, especially Kalpana Chawla, Sunita Williams, the first women, Indian women astronauts. And I was really inspired. And I told myself, well, if they can do it, then why can't I? And if Neil Armstrong can leave his footprints on the moon as a legacy, why can't I, or why can't another woman? I think for every, it's impossible, or for every, she'll grow out of it, or every, that's at least 50 or 60 years away. For every single one of those I get more and more empowered. That's what tells me, okay, well, I'm on the right track then. What I'm doing is right for who I am. And what I'm doing is, I hope it inspires other girls like myself. So long answer short, I think there was a British mountaineer that was asked the question, why do you want to climb Mount Everest? And he said, simply because it is there. And why do you want to go to Mars? Number one, because it's a passion. Learning about this planet it's simply amazing. And building rockets is something I've wanted to do. Building rockets, building space probes, it's something I've wanted to do since I was young. And for the simple reason, why do you want to go to Mars? For the simple reason, because it is there. And because it is waiting to be conquered, just like another peak. And it would be one of humanity's greatest adventures. And I'm hoping to ride sort of the coattails of this adventure into space.
Gosh, it's so interesting listening to you, because with all my engineering, I have never, ever had a desire to go to another planet. I'm just so wanting to fix the issues and problems we have here on Earth, and there are many. Mm-hmm. That's right. So it's kind of, it's really interesting hearing you, because, mountains, I really understand. After I climbed Kilimanjaro, I was like, oh, I want to keep going. I want to climb Aconcagua, like all the other peaks. But I just don't get, I really do understand all of the challenges that come up as a result of wanting to get to Mars, and all the technologies that are being developed, and how those technologies get adapted to solving solutions here on Earth. But the actual journey, it's going to take a long time for you to get there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be no easy feat. On average, give or take, it takes about 6 to 9 months to get to Mars, and that's on a good day when it's at its closest to the Earth. So it's, as you said, it's no easy feat. And I think one of another big reason as to why some people are really against, space exploration in general can be, the costs of it are too many, and the costs of, funding space exploration could be better diverted to things that are more pressing on Earth. And this is a very valid concern. And being a proponent of, being a climate change activist myself, I of course, I 100% believe that there are some very urgent and pressing problems on Earth that have to be addressed. I think, however, when you see sort of the trajectory of the way technology progressed during the space age and during the height of the space age, as you said, there are a lot of technology spin-offs that were derived from NASA working on the Apollo missions, from the vacuum cleaner to, actually, I think the biggest one really is the miniaturization of technology. So the reason that we're even able to communicate to each other via this laptop and not a massive supercomputer that fills up an entire room was because of the Apollo mission's need for miniaturizing technology, which led to the need for we need to make all the technology we have as fast as possible, as powerful as possible, into as small a package as possible, because we need to fit it onto this essentially tin can, which is what it was, and shoot it up to space with as less payload as possible, because the heavier the payload, the more the money it costs to launch it into space. So this led to a lot of technology spin-offs, and there are a lot of pressing issues. For example, global warming really, I think, is one of the biggest issues. And I know a lot of scientists that have been working on understanding, Mars being terraformed is still, an idea that's, I think, light years away. It's something that's not currently feasible. However, when we understand more about how Mars lost her atmosphere and how, for example, what we could do, albeit, through artificial processes to, maybe make Mars more habitable. This is an idea being floated, but it is actively being worked on by scientists. And one of the end goals of working on understanding how we could go about terraforming Mars isn't actually to end up terraforming Mars. It's to find solutions to maybe slow down or even reverse the global warming process happening on Earth. And I don't want to say Mars, I don't want to call Mars as sort of like a backyard for testing our equipment, because Mars is too far and too expensive to call it a playground to test our equipment on. But it is something that we can test our science against. And when Mars happens to be sort of like the parameters, it is more or less similar to Earth. So understanding how things work in space and how we can go about mitigating issues in space can help us understand more about the planet we live on and mitigating some of the issues that we have here. And another big issue that could be solved by working on the missions to Mars would be the hunger crisis, the global hunger crisis here on planet Earth, where, you have millions of starving people all over the planet. Even in, developed countries like America, there are starving people on each and every single inch of this planet, which is a very tragic statistic, because we're in the 21st century. We've made so many advancements. We've progressed so much as a species, and yet, if we can't put food on everybody's plate on the planet, 3 times a day, it is a travesty, I would say. However, working on a mission to Mars, taking 6 to 9 months, and it should be enough, like the food that the crew carries with them to Mars should be enough to sustain them for at least a year or two before they can start growing their own crops and becoming self-sustained on the planet. Understanding how we would work on rationing that food, understanding how we could maybe pack denser calories into smaller amounts of food, understanding all of these things will help us solve larger issues that we have on Earth. So while a lot of people choose to focus on the problem itself, I like to tell them to see space as one of the potential long-term solutions to these problems that we have on Earth. And I'm not saying that means we should divert all of our funding towards Mars and ignore all of the issues we have on Earth. That should be focused on as well. But what NASA does is a very small fraction of what the US spends as a whole on its country. And NASA budget already being extremely small, with the research that they're doing up there is very important, both for the continuity of our species and to solve a lot of the long-term issues we have here on the planet. So I think it's important that we focus on the benefits we can get out of space exploration to ourselves as well, as a byproduct of focusing on something as huge as a mission to Mars.
You're so going to Mars.
Thank you.
Like,
I'll hold you to it.
I mean, I have to say, I've been consoling myself for a while now that space exploration is actually really valid and important for saving our planet, even though the actual ambition is out there. I've convinced myself that space exploration and experimentation is really important for helping us back here, whether that's mining for elements or whatever it may be. And so it kind of just justifies how much is being spent. I still just can't get my head around how people would want to be in a capsule for 9 months traveling. So that's what I still can't get over, but maybe I'll get there with time. But, in listening to you, you are so knowledgeable and just so confident in the way you carry yourself. Like, why wouldn't you be selected to go to Mars? I mean, in these few minutes of speaking to you, I completely see why NASA snapped you up. But like, what have been the limiting factors of getting Asian women into space? Like, let's get honest here.
Yeah, I understand that question. At least I can speak from the experience of being an Indian woman, and I think when I speak to other girls like myself who once had dreams, in space, or when they were younger, they dreamed of it, and then eventually they decided to pursue, as they call it, more stable career paths. And this is a perfectly valid, perfectly valid reasoning. I think at least from my experience, one of the biggest limiting factors can be societal pressure. And it can be societal pressure to essentially, hey, I mean, dreams like that, they're not assured. And becoming an astronaut candidate, it's extremely difficult. If I remember correctly, in 2016, NASA had, I believe, 18,000 applications. And from those 18,000 applications, barely, a handful of people are selected every other year. I would say give or take 20 to 22 people. And it's an extremely rigorous testing process. The training is rigorous. It can last, it's up to a couple of years. And being as rigorous as it is, it essentially is a weed out process, and, to pick the best of the best. And the very idea of going through this process can seem very daunting. And because of that, I understand why people can think of it as not an assured career path. It definitely isn't assured. And I've heard stories of astronauts who have had to try, veteran astronauts today, who have had to apply, tens of times, who have applied more than 12, 13 times before they ended up being selected as an astronaut candidate, and even got to fly on their first mission to the ISS. So it is in no way, I would say, in the beginning, it doesn't sound like a stable career path at all. And a lot of people, financial challenges can be another barrier. In order to sustain yourself until you apply, to become an astronaut, you work as an engineer, because you don't just become an astronaut, you work in your STEM field, and you earn your master's degree, and you can, go on to earn a PhD, or, but you will also need, years of experience. So it's not something you do overnight. And to sustain yourself until you achieve that goal, it can seem like a very daunting prospect. And I understand why a lot of people essentially the dream falls out, the dream stops. And I understand that this is one of the barriers that affects Indian women, and especially women of color. Having spoken to many girls, they say, oh, my parents said, engineering it's a great career path, but maybe you should focus on, becoming an engineer first, and then focus on settling down, and then we'll think about becoming an astronaut. And then you think about it, it never really happens unless you really put your mind to it, and unless you're really working towards it. So these are just a couple of the barriers that, it's very hard. And I'm very privileged, I would say. This is me acknowledging the privilege that I have in being born to a family where my parents are able to support me, and my parents are able, to support me emotionally and financially. They're able to say, hey, no matter where, I remember my dad, when I told my dad of my dream to become an astronaut, he said, you take wherever the horizon leads you. And if the horizon is beyond the stars, then so be it. And I understand that this support doesn't necessarily come from all parents. And it is very distressing. It is very upsetting to know that a lot of girls, their dream falls out very early on, at a very young age, when they realize that society isn't actively working to support them. And the divide between men and women in STEM fields, especially in engineering, is so vast that the number of the gender ratio in STEM classes can also be another reason why pursuing a STEM degree can sound very off-putting to women. And these are some of the things that I have seen are stopping women from, essentially pursuing STEM degrees, or, planning on achieving long-term goals like becoming an astronaut. And in recent years, there is a change. A change is slowly starting to form. The trend is slowly starting to move towards women, more and more women coming into STEM fields, especially with, there's so many science communicators on social media that are, out there just like, spreading resources and giving people as much help as they can, giving them advice and, giving them tips and on how to apply to universities and how to, essentially reflect your best in applications, and how to access resources that may not necessarily be available on the surface level in order to consider jobs and consider STEM degrees to apply for. And so we are starting to see a paradigm shift towards more and more women joining the STEM workforce. And now the issue has become more of retaining these women in either, STEM academia or the industry. And this comes, and if you want to retain women in industry or in academia, I believe that, most of this comes from forming an inclusive environment in industries and companies, in classrooms, in universities, because while the norm has been very increasingly men so far, people have to work together to make women feel included, women feel like they belong in classrooms and like they belong in the companies that they work at. And then we will see higher retention rates of women staying on in the STEM workforce. And I believe that, I'm an optimistic person. So I believe that the trend is changing, and we are going to see more and more women join the workforce as the years go by. And I would be so bold as to make a claim that a future where men and women are more or less evenly tied in engineering is not very far off.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's interesting that you have that view, because things have changed so much in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you are so appreciative of the importance of inclusivity is so fascinating, because I don't know if you were even alive when things were really actually quite bad. Like, STEM worlds were so homogenous, and things have only got better with time. So thank you for pointing out the importance of inclusivity.
Absolutely.
I mean, you mentioned your parents, who sound absolutely amazing. do you not then have that typical sort of like Asian expectation?
Yeah, it's a very, perfectly understandable stereotype where it's like, oh, the Asian parent, pushing their kids to succeed. And honestly, I think it should be in every parent stereotype, because who doesn't want their kid to succeed, right? But I know that Asians can be portrayed, especially in media, as like, oh, these cutthroat parents, like pushing their kids to do everything and achieve every single thing. My parents, they did lay a lot of importance on academics, I won't lie here, from a very young age. But my dad really stressed the importance of soft skills. So that's something that he did that I'm very grateful for, where he would always be like, okay, academics is great. You can have A's, you can have straight A's. It would be great, but none of it would matter if, for example, you're not a good presenter, if you're not a good communicator. And, he would focus on, he would tell me to speak as much as possible. And, every time in family gatherings, I would only be about 10 or 11 years old, but he would always ask me to speak up and involve myself in discussions along with the adults, where appropriate. And, he would always make me feel included in these discussions. And so from a very early age, I was able to really practice my speaking skills, and debate and public speaking are two things I've really enjoyed growing up in school, and I continue to enjoy it in college now. So one thing that my parents did for me was really emphasize soft skills. And, they would be like, academics is great, that's awesome, but you also need to have these vital skills that are important as a human being and not as an academic. I remember my dad would also say, and this was more my mother as well, both my parents would say, you can spend a certain amount of hours on your academics, but make sure that you're also spending a certain amount of hours thinking about what you want to do in the future. And when they would encourage me to, set aside these, thinking, sort of times to sit and reflect on where I've come so far and what lies ahead of me, that really inspired me to start thinking about my career from a very young age. And that inspired me to do a lot of research around, becoming an engineer and becoming, going into aerospace engineering, narrowing it down to aerospace engineering from all the different engineering disciplines there are, and eventually, deciding on how I'm going to go about, fulfilling this massive dream of wanting to become an astronaut. And sure, every now and then when I call them, they're back home in Dubai. Every now and then when I call them, my mother's first question she asks me is, so how's your GPA looking? So of course, it's a very valid concern. And I appreciate that my parents are there for me, both academically and also for me as a human being, where they supported me in, honing these other skills that are just as important as an engineering student, or just as a human being, I think. Yeah.
Well, I must say your communication skills are exceptional. Like you're so engaging to listen to. So how has it been sort of dealing with the academic side? Because anyone listening to you may actually just go, oh, she's probably super smart. She's so great at communication. She's at NASA, like she's only 20, like she's just one of these like exceptional prodigy type of people that I could never be. Is there a secret to your success? Like what has happened behind the scenes for you to have reached these levels of accomplishment?
Honestly, there is no secret. There's absolutely no secret to it. And I struggle just as all human beings struggle. I have doubts just as all human beings have doubts. And honestly, STEM, I remember reading just this line somewhere on the internet last week. It's that STEM is hard for everyone. It's not just, it's hard for a certain demographic of people. It's not, just hard for a certain, you have to be thinking a certain way. I know there are a lot of stereotypes. You have to be a certain type of nerd to understand, physics, or you have to be really good at math, and only then will you succeed as an engineer. And I've heard all of these stereotypes, and I found that the one factor and one factor alone that keeps people in, like, stay within a STEM degree. And honestly, everyone fails. Everyone goes through periods. I mean, who hasn't had a bad exam? I've had plenty of bad exams. And, both in high school and in university, I have plenty of bad days, and I've had plenty of times where I've sat down and really thought about my future in this career, really thought about my future in this degree. And I found that one thing and one thing alone is what keeps people going, and what leads to success, and it's persistence. Because unrewarded talent is a thing, unrewarded genius is also a thing. And persistence and determination are the two things alone that can get you through anything. And STEM is hard for everyone. Every single person that I've ever met, every single person I've read about that has been in a STEM degree, and being an engineer, I'm sure you yourself can attest to that. None of us are born geniuses. And even if someone carries themselves like a born genius, I can guarantee you they've had more questions of doubt. They've had more, moments of struggle in their life than anyone else has. And I think it's getting up when, things kick you down, when, recovering from a bad exam is just as important as doing well in the exams that come after that exam. And because when you lose the persistence, and when you resign yourself as, oh, I'll never be good at it, and I'll never end up doing what I want to do, or I'll never end up, getting this degree. When you resign yourself to that fact, that's when, you slip down. And that's when you feel like maybe a STEM degree isn't the path for you. I think that everyone can succeed in STEM as long as they have the persistence. And that's the one thing that I've seen is what keeps most successful. It's what I'm modeling my life based off as well. When I see all of these successful engineering graduates, they all acknowledge that they've been through extremely hard points in their life, extremely, having to deal with personal. I've read stories where people have had to deal with personal circumstances while they deal with, academic probation, or, an exponentially dropping GPA. I've read stories like this, and the one thing that got them back up and to where they are right now, as an engineer, or, pursuing multiple degrees, is that they were persistent, is that they kept going in the face of all adversity. They said, hey, even if this beats me, I'm going to get back up and I'm going to keep working hard. And I know that, I've read stories of astronauts who didn't do so well in math and physics when they were in high school, who got straight B's in algebra, and but they just kept going. They kept going in the face of all adversity. They told themselves, I'm going to get better at this. I'm not better at it now, but I'm never going to get better at it unless I keep pushing myself, and unless I keep working hard, unless I keep looking for resources that can help me. And they kept pushing, and they made it. And I think there's no secret at all to doing well in a STEM degree, because it's hard for everyone. Every single person struggles with it. And the one thing that keeps people going is persistence.
Honestly, I want to high five you there.
High five.
Because, I think it's actually selfish. You really made me realize something about myself. So thank you so much, because, women in STEM can be kind of intimidating. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can feel like those women are kind of unreachable. They're like a breed of their own, because maybe they were just really, really clever in STEM subjects. And actually, I've kind of faced that, where people are like, oh my God, you've got your qualifications in engineering, like you must just be someone very different. But actually, all I had was persistence, and I just worked really hard. Mm-hmm. Like I wasn't particularly, I was terrible at maths at school, but I just worked really hard. And I don't often give myself credit for just how hard I worked. So thank you for reminding me of that. But I think it's also really such a great message, whether you're in STEM or not, because, in life, and you just embody this, which is, you are so clear of your life goals that you're just like making an absolute straight line kind of dash towards where you want to get to. And, the fact that that is fueled by persistence and a lack of fear of kind of failure, I guess. I mean, I just get the impression from you that if something doesn't quite go to plan, you're like, okay, cool. How do I fix this? Which is so typically an engineering brain. So, I mean, you know, thank you for saying what you've said, because you've just become more human to me. Because I'm like, I totally relate to you. Like, you know, you just really know what you want and you're going for it. It's so inspiring. So my question to you then is, why should women choose STEM? I understand why you chose STEM because of your goals, but why is it important for more women to choose STEM?
I think women, well, first off, you have to have the passion for it. And nothing comes out of, oh, I just want to do it because it's there. If you really want to succeed in the field you're in, you have to have passion for it. And this is something passion is something I'm very clear on. You know, passion is something, yeah, you definitely need passion, because without passion, you won't have this kind of persistence. It's because I'm passionate about, you know, attaining this goal someday and helping, you know, inspire people on this journey as I go towards that goal. Because I have this passion, I'm able to get up whenever life knocks me down, or whenever a failure knocks me down. I'm able to get up and say, okay, what's next? Or what's plan B? And if you don't have that passion, if you don't have something to drive you, then there will be points where it becomes very difficult to overcome a failure, because you'll be struggling to find the mindset to overcome that failure. And when you struggle to find that mindset, that can slow you down in preparing for the next obstacle. And there will, you know, undoubtedly be a lot of obstacles that you will have to overcome in your degree in STEM. As I'm learning, as I'm, you know, I'm still not finished. I'm still only just beginning my second year in September. And I'm still learning about all of the obstacles, you know, just in my first year. I've learned of many, and I know that there are many to come in the next 3 years as well. And so if you don't have the passion, it's going to be extremely hard, if not exponentially impossible, for you to get through and, you know, become successful in the field that you want to go into. So I think women should go into STEM when, you know, case in point, they are passionate. They need to be passionate about it. And secondly, because we need women's brains in STEM. Because again, I mentioned, you know, inclusivity earlier on in this conversation. We need different brains. And this is something I learned in my very first engineering ethics class that I took, you know, literally in Introduction to Engineering. That was the name of the class. That was the very first engineering class I took in my life, in my first semester of college. And there was a small section of that class dedicated to why inclusivity and you know, diversity in engineering is important. And it was the first time that I understood you know, the world of difference it can make when you have all of these different mindsets from different places, different ways of thinking, you know, come together to solve a design problem. And I saw this from experience. I worked, my very first engineering team was an equal split. It was a 50, we were 4 people in a team, and there were 2 boys and 2 girls, including myself. And I saw the world of difference it could make when you have, you know, women adding ideas just on the same table that men are as well. And while the boys, you know, would try and take lead I remember in the beginning of sort of working with that team, the boys would try to take lead, which is, you know, everyone wants to take lead. It's quite natural. And the boys would try and take lead, and they would try and leave myself and the other girl in sort of the back burner. But then they realized how much more successful we could make a project when they included our opinions and when they let us be in the lead as well. And our final design review, it was myself and the other girl with me that did most of the presentation. And we ended up becoming one of the most outstanding teams in our class of over 100 students. And, you know, I believe it was like 27 different teams. We came out as one of the most outstanding teams, and myself and her, we were the outstanding students of the class because we were given that opportunity to shine, and because we were, you know, we felt included in that environment. And as we see the culture, as I mentioned, the paradigm shift towards including more women, including more underrepresented minorities in engineering fields, we see all these different mindsets coming together to solve a design problem, to think about problems in ways that have never been imagined before. Because every single idea that someone puts on the table, especially in an engineering team, comes from their own learned experiences. It comes from, their experiences of similar problems they may have encountered in their life so far. It may come from their understanding of the problem. It can come from the way they've seen people in their communities handle problems like this. And when all of these different people, when all of these, we have so many unique brains on the table, offer ideas, that's your design solution becomes all the more better. And this was a very engineering oriented sort of answer, and I think you can apply it to most of life as well. When you have all of these different brains coming together to solve a problem, it makes your solution, well, number one, all the more interesting, and number two, all the more viable of an option, because everyone has such a different idea, and each different idea tackles the problem in such a unique way. And figuring out, and when you work with people that aren't necessarily as highly represented in engineering fields, when you see the kind of ideas they come up with, it can be amazing, because it's like, that never occurred to me. That would have never occurred to me in a million years, because their experience is so different from the one that you've lived up till now, and which is what makes their ideas so different. And when you hear about ideas like that, that's what makes your the challenge seem a lot more easier. And we need more women for this absolute reason, because we have ideas that that other men may not necessarily have, that other majorities represented in engineering very overwhelmingly may not have. And women of color, especially women from these underrepresented minorities, they may have ideas that the world has never seen before. These ideas have the potential to change the world, to change the progression of our species as we know it. And when you understand the impact that your ideas can make as a woman, that's when you feel motivated. And all of these things are tied together in a very beautiful way. That's when you understand, when you realize the change you can make, that's when you understand your passion towards a problem, towards solving a massive issue in our society today. And that's when you start working towards it. We need more women in STEM, because we need more unique ideas. We need more unique ideas that the world has never seen before, that I am willing to bet is in the brain of every woman who has ever considered engineering at some point in her life.
Wow. I love your message. It's so badass. And it's so the future, like you are describing the change that's happening. And it's so exciting. Like the vision you're creating of things to come is really the world I want to live in. Because it's a place where women are regarded, they are valid, they are significant, they are equal, they bring significance to the table. They are not ignored any longer. And that's such a beautiful vision of the future. So my final question to you would be, how, because I see you as a very empowered woman, okay, you're just 20, but you are so empowered in what you bring to this world. And my God, even just that alone is like, it describes the shift that's happening in society with regards to gender and underrepresented ethnicities. But my final question to you is, how, as a woman who does get the opportunity to be empowered in STEM, how do you see it working that women juggle both motherhood, relationships, a badass career? Like we have so much on our plates as empowered women. How does it work in the future that will be yours one day?
It's a lot of, well, with great power comes great responsibility. I think it's amazing that, I see stories of, recently the first Mexican-born woman went to space, Katya Echezarreta, and she spoke a little bit about how she juggles all of these different things, and it was really inspiring to me because, as you said, I'm only 20. I still have a long way to go in my life, and right now, the biggest things I'm juggling are, academics and my college, my finances. Those are, and relationships as well. And those are three really big things. And motherhood, certainly, when I hear of other women juggling, a stable career, I see stories of women at NASA, with families, and during the weekends they take care of their children, they take them out to these parties, and during the week they're working as flight operations director. It's crazy, it's amazing, it's crazy amazing. And it's amazing. And I really think I'm still at that stage in my life where, because I don't have the experience yet of, I don't have the experience of being a mother. I don't have an experience of having to juggle really important relationships. Right now, the most significant relationships in my life are the ones I have with my mentors, my friends, and my parents. And so I still don't know what it takes to juggle all of those relationships. But if I can tell you one thing, it's that it looks really hard. And honestly, kudos to all of the women that are doing it. It's crazy amazing, as I said. And when I see other women do it, it empowers me as well. Empowered women empower other women, right? And when I see these women do it, that tells me, hey, I mean, if they can do it, because that's pretty much what I've based all my dreams off, which is, if other women can do it, then I can go just as far. And if not, I can go much further than that, which is what I tell, people that I hope to inspire as well. Hey, if I can go this far, then you can go 10 miles as far, and you can go, you can go exponentially farther than I can ever even imagine of. And when I see women, juggle all of these things while also, as you said, badass careers, it's amazing. And they make it look so easy. They make it look so doable and so simple, which is really the contrary of what it actually must be. And honestly, a massive salute. And it's great that society is working on finding more ways to include women, especially who are juggling all of these different things, to retain them in the workforce. And, we find solutions like, something as simple as daycare to take care of children while the parents are out working. It's great that as a society, we're coming together to find solutions for these women, to find solutions for these, parents who are juggling careers and, amazing, like super specific, super technical careers, and, taking care of children. It's amazing that we're finding solutions. And as I said, I am an optimistic person. So the trend is moving very rapidly towards, juggling all of these different things. So as the trend goes, society will work on finding ways to make it easier on the person, having to shoulder all of these burdens, shoulder all of these, many things in their life. It will definitely become easier for them as time goes on. And when I see women like these achieving these things, it tells me, the sky sure isn't the limit. For sure it isn't, when there are footprints on the moon. And I'm definitely empowered when I hear stories of women like this. And I tell other girls, hey, you can do whatever you want to do in this life. If you want to become a mother, and if you want to become a scientist at the same time, you can do it. And something crazy that I can mention is I really enjoy acting. And I've a small part of me has always also wanted to go on Broadway. And when I won the Mars Generations 24 under 24 Young Representatives and Ambassadors of STEM Award in 2020, I remember the description of me was, she wants to become an actress on Broadway and an astronaut in space at the same time. And hey, if she wants to do it, then why not? If she wants to have dreams as big as the planet, why not? And these things are doable. And when you have passion for something, you'll make time for it. You'll find time for it. And it definitely isn't as crazy as it sounds. You can definitely juggle these things. And I have a great deal of respect for women who can do it. And I look forward to the time, because I can see women doing it right now. I look forward to the time when I will have to, juggle those responsibilities myself. And it makes the future seem all the more brighter, because if these women are doing it effortlessly, then I can do it half as effortlessly as them.
Well, you know what? Like, I feel like we've come full circle, because we started the conversation with saying the sky is not the limit. And in hearing you, it's clear that if you have dreams, you simply have to persist and just keep going with it, because you'll get there. And your enthusiasm and your drive and your determination just really proves that, whatever it is that you want, you can get. Nothing holds us back apart from ourselves. And you will come across challenges, like all of us have in life, because that's just the story of life. We come across obstacles and we figure out how to overcome them. And in hearing you, I just feel like what is so important is something that you mentioned quite early on, is just support. Like, here you are working so hard to fulfill your dreams. And I really feel like what will make you get there is not just you, but the network you have around you who are cheering you on. And you have absolutely every reason to be cheered on, because you are such a formidable woman. And I'm so honored that you came on this series to share your experiences and your dreams. And I'll be following you to just see where you go, because you are the role model that we have all really needed in STEM. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
I'm glad to hear that. And thank you so much for having me. This was a really fun conversation to have. And for me as well, it was, a moment of reflection of how far I've come in. I mean, it's been almost a year since I moved to the US to pursue my studies. And this conversation was a way for me to reflect on, how far I've come, and how far of, how many more miles there still are to be walked. So thank you so much for having me on here. I was honored to be on your podcast as well. And I hope, I definitely hope that this message reaches a young woman's mind and tells her that the sky isn't the limit.
Thanks for listening, and please do subscribe to this podcast and maybe even rate and review it if you can. The more ratings and reviews, then the more interest from those trusty algorithms, which could help to increase the reach of this show. And you can watch the video recording of this conversation on YouTube on my new series called Esteemed. It's all about self-discovery, self-evolution, and inclusivity on innovation. Let's all strive to be in the best versions of ourselves and celebrate others being themselves too. As always, be kind and loving, and I wish you all a great week.